when they wanted to write the Bible, no, take up the Quran or the Bible, you look at it. This is purely an idea that is coming from Africa. Not just the idea, but even some of the text in it have actually been copied, just simply copied. Now you are, if Europeans were advanced as they pretend that they were, they would not need to use African to form their religion. They would just simply put their religion there. For the fact that the 10 commandments were taken out from the 42 negative confessions that have been there for thousands of years, just simply tells you that that was the order of the day. Moses didn't know that there was the 42 negative confession before he went to the mountain.
Well, where do those 42 negative confessions come from? They came from Egypt, right? And Egypt is European, right? They had to make Egypt white, in order to explain this. But not just Egypt, Martin Luther King actually wrote a paper when he was in grad school. It was two, one on Mithra, but the other is basically just called the mystery religions. And he mentions Asar and Aset, or Isis and Horus and Osiris, as the Greeks called them. But he mentions them in his paper. But he also goes on to mention how Christianity in itself was a collection of many different Mediterranean faiths. So, not just Egypt, but also Zoroastrianism and various other things. But, and of course, like the Greek Dionysus and various others, but, and it's very interesting because it's almost as if the Greeks and the Romans knew this themselves because, and of course they did, right? Because when you look at, let's take Isis, for example, Aset, right? A goddess is created by the name of Isis. But at the same time, the knowledge or the understanding that there is an Egyptian Aset exists too. It's like, okay, so you took this deity and you made it your own, but you still acknowledge the existence of the other. It shows the amount of confusion and a willingness to copy people's culture, and because of their own power at the time, not really care about what other people thought of it. It's like, well, it's ours now. But that, by the time of the Roman era, just became a very type of ethos of European ideology, just to bring in various people's culture, their spiritual culture, their even their history and language and myths and all these different things, to bring it in and then rebrand it as something that is European. There's a book, De Souza Santos, and it's called Epistemologies of the South, and he's basically admitting this, that this has been kind of the Eurocentric ethos, is to raid the epistemologies, raid the cultures, the cultural ideas of the South, and then rebrand it as something that is European.
Now, I'm just reflecting, I'm just thinking aloud. Maybe I'm wrong. I think that the people in the ancient, they knew perfectly what they were doing, who they were dealing with. Today, many Europeans, I say this one often, they literally think that they are seeing Africa for the first times. Many Europeans, including those that are in Italy, they literally think that the past 20 years, the outbreak of immigration, because they will ask questions like, do your father live on top of the tree? Something as horrible as that. Somebody have said it in this generation. Like, what I believe, just my belief, maybe I'm wrong on it, let me say it, is that at the time this culture were missing off, of course, the high culture was actually Africa. There is no doubt about it, because the Greek, who are the father of Western civilization, didn't go to Africa as master. They go there, they went there as students to learn. Because where would you go to if you want to learn? Say, for example, many Africans today would like to come to the West to learn because their institutions have been destroyed. They are basically on the ground. That is just the way it is. Now, I think when this was happening, the Europeans could not imagine that they were going to be the Lord of this world. Because if they knew, they would have done it differently. They were simply taking what is the order of the day. That is why they will build obelisks in different parts of Europe. Because that was the symbol. That was what everybody knew. Even though when we look at it, we see that it's coming from somewhere. Because if you were so powerful, if you were really sophisticated as it were, you wouldn't take something that is of people of less importance and bring it to your home, in their religion, in their worship, in their language. You wouldn't do that.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if you want to say anything to that effect, or maybe I don't know, I'm just thinking aloud.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It was a huge inferiority complex that Europe went through, and particularly Greece and Rome. And when we're talking about that time, because it has happened several times since then, the raiding of people's cultural artifacts and their cultural ideology, and then rebranding it as something that's yours, and it was justified by conquering, right? It was justified by this notion that because of the Ptolemaic dynasty, right? That means that all of Egypt was European, right? Or at least you can brand it that way. You can have Elizabeth Taylor play Cleopatra on television, and regardless of Cleopatra's past. But why Cleopatra? That's the question. Why not some of the older stories of the actual dynastic eras of Kemetic culture or ancient Egyptian culture? Why not focus on those? Well, because the more you focus on those, the darker the people are going to be. and so let's deal with these Ptolemies and this classical era, right? Because that is European classics. Although they're trying to push this narrative that what is classical is the standard of human civilization. No, that's just your classical history. Just as what was occurring in the Nile Valley was African classical history.
There are this just simple common sense that people don't want to apply. Okay, so Egypt is a Western civilization. Okay, fine. Let's say they are Italians, people coming from Germany or from the Caucasus Mountain. Fine, beautiful. But what drove you from the Caucasus Mountain to Africa to establish your civilization and then return back to the Caucasus Mountain? Is it not common sense? Okay, they came from Germany, Austria, beautiful. From France, we got it because they left France. What is the evidence of them leaving there to Egypt and then returning? Why do you? I think it's a common sense, but people don't ask questions, or maybe I'm just asking too many questions.
How do you make sure that African history is not of someone else's construction, right? That you're making sure that African history is being done in a correct way, in an Afrocentric way, in a way that African people and the agency of African people is being considered.
All right, but this agency, what exactly do you mean?
So agency is when a person acts on their own behalf, right? So generally how history is done is or when African history is written, it's written by the West, I should say. It's in this way, as if there's something to be discovered in Africa, either someone from the outside came in and built it, or African people did it by happenstance, or it was some magic miracle, or in today's society, aliens came down and built it for them. And so, it's something that cannot be explained by these ignorant natives who we have found here, quote unquote, right? And so let's take, you mentioned Zimbabwe, let's take in Zimbabwe, for example, and we can mix in the Bible with that. So in the United States, and just to be clear for all listeners, in the United States, we know of this notion of the curse of Ham, right? That Ham cursed Noah, and I'm sorry, that Noah cursed Ham, and that all his descendants were black of skin, and that in the United States, that justified enslavement, that justified slavery. In other parts of the Western world, however, that took some other interesting areas, whereas in other parts of the world, particularly in Britain and other areas, Africans are not even considered in the Bible. So